Welcome to another Lessons in Angular, where we discuss best practices and trending topics in the Angular community. Today we're going to be talking about Angular pipes and what's the big deal about them. My name is Kevin Schuhard, and my guest today is Jesse Sanders. Jesse is a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies, and the founder and CEO of Briebug. So Jesse, what is the big deal about pipes?
Well, the big deal about pipes is that almost every application needs to format or transform data and display it to users in a format that they can understand. Pipes makes this process very, very simple and repeatable. Pipes are most commonly added to the HTML template to format the data in a way that makes sense to our users. In this example here, I have a total cost variable that I want to display as currency. So I go ahead and add the pipe symbol behind it, and then I add the currency pipe, which will then do the formatting for me.
So I see we're using double curly braces. Is that interpolation that we're using with the pipes?
That's a great question. That is interpolation. Interpolation allows developers to use logic, variables, or function calls to create text between HTML elements or within attribute tags. We use the double curly braces in this example to tell Angular to go ahead and interpret or interpolate the values contained. In our example here, we want Angular to take the total cost variable and insert that text into our HTML template here.
So Jesse, since functions allow us to format our data, why not just use a function directly in the template?
It's a great question. Functions in HTML templates are allowed, but they're generally considered to be a bad practice because they run on every change detection cycle. This leads to poor performance. And the other really big problem here is that they're very difficult then to share between components. In this example here, I have a total cost variable, which is defined as a number with a value of 1.5. I also have a function called format currency that takes a value. We console log that value out, and then we go ahead and do some very simple formatting where we're adding a $ to the value and also adding a 0 to the end so that it kind of formats it correctly. If we look at our HTML, you can see that we have a span tag here that has a total label, and we are using our format currency function and passing our variable total cost. And this is all surrounded in double curly braces, so it'll be interpolated by Angular. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, we have a total of $1.50. It looks great, right? Well, there's one little problem here. If we go ahead and expand the console here, you can see that format currency was ran a total of 4 times. That tells us that change detection actually occurred 4 times during the loading of this very simple application, and thus the format currency function was called 4 different times. Now, in cases where we have a larger application, where we have more instances of change detection being fired, this function could literally be called hundreds of times.
So in a large enterprise application with thousands of components and template methods all over the place, this could be a huge performance bottleneck.
This would be a huge problem. Let's take a look at the purpose of pipes. So pipes have 2 basic purposes. The first one is transformation. And transformation is we want to transform our data from one format to another. The other purpose of pipes is formatting. So this allows us to apply formatting consistently throughout an application. There's also benefits of a pipe. The first is that they're reusable. So we write it once and we can use it everywhere. The second one is that they are composable. So we can actually use multiple pipes together and they're processed from left to right. Encapsulation is also another important benefit of pipes, as it allows us to take our logic and have it encapsulated and hidden for those details, and we don't have to worry about how currency is being formatted or what are the underpinnings of what's occurring. And the last one is performance. So performance of pipes is important because they can actually watch for the changes, and we don't have to have change detection involved. Let's take a look at how we define a pipe. Pipes are simple classes that implement the pipe transform base class. This class provides the change detection logic that understands when the transform method is called. So pipes are declared using a decorator, the pipe decorator, in fact, where we give it the name. The name is what we're going to use later to be able to implement our pipe in our HTML template. Our transform function takes 2 arguments. It takes a value and it takes optional arguments which can be used later to dictate how we transform our data.
So Jesse, I see we're using the transform method in this class. If I had an application where I was heavily using template methods, it seems like I could pretty easily lift and shift that logic into a pipe.
Exactly. I could take that exact logic, copy it into my pipe, and then call that method from my transform method, and I get all the change detection that comes from the pipe transform base class. Let's take a look at some simple examples. We're going to go out to StackBlitz again and take a look at some of the intro pipes that we can use. So here you can see I have my app component, and it has two variables, message and message2. And then over, if we look at the HTML, you can see in our app component that we've got an H1 with basic text pipes, and then we have two paragraph tags, one with message and one with message2. And also I've made some notes here. First, we want to take and make message all uppercase. So you can see over on the right-hand side in our HTML that message is in all lowercase and message2 is in all uppercase. So I'm going to come over here to my message. I'm going to add the pipe symbol behind it, and then I'm going to say uppercase. And now you can see in my HTML that it has transformed all lowercase into all uppercase. The next one I'm going to do here is on message 2, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to lowercase. So I add the lowercase pipe, and it took my uppercase message and is now all lowercase. So the bonus here is to make the H1 render in title case. So title case is where every word is capitalized for the first letter.
Okay.
So the problem here is that we have an H1 and there is no interpolation. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to highlight all of it, and I'm going to add the double braces. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make what was just plain text, and I'm going to make that a string. So it's going to kind of act like a variable for us. And so now I got it as a variable. And now all I need to do is go ahead and add my pipe symbol, and I'm going to then use my title case pipe. And now, as you can see, basic text pipes is in title case.
Great. So we don't have to create a instance property to use pipes. We can just use them on strings that are hard-coded in the template directly.
Absolutely. Yes. So this was a little more kind of a trick question here,
Right.
Because it was just basic text in there, and it wasn't a variable or a string that we could operate on, and we had no double braces to do the interpolation. So I had to make a couple additional changes there to make that happen, but as you can see, it was pretty easy to do.
So Jesse, those pipe examples look pretty great. Are there any other built-in pipes that we can take advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Angular team recognized early on that there should be a common set of pipes to help with some basic formatting. So these pipes include the text ones that we just looked at, also for numbers and dates. So text pipes are used to take strings or data and format it to the proper casing. As we saw in our previous example, we could do uppercase, lowercase, title case. So in our example here, we got a kind of a mixed text, mixed casing variable here that we want to then make it all uppercase. And so in this case here, what's going to happen is Angular is going to interpolate this value and then make all the characters uppercase. So in creating web applications, we're often dealing with lots of different types of data, including numbers and dates. So with numbers, we might want to specify the number of integer places to show, as well as what fractional, it's decimal places that we want to display. We also have currency, we have symbols, whatnot, that we need to display there. And then we have dates, which can also include not just the date part and the order of the date, but also time zones and additional formatting around that. Angular has very specific pipes that are available to us for handling numbers and dates. Let's take a look at number and date pipes in action. We're going to go out to StackBlitz again, pull up our application, and you can see here in our app component, I've declared 4 different variables. I have total cost, grade, boat length, and today. And on my HTML, I've got 4 different divs that have each one of those variables within it. And we look at our output right now, and you can see, Kevin, the output doesn't really look too good, especially look at that date. That's pretty tough to understand, right?
Yeah.
All right. So how would we go ahead and correct this? Well, since we're dealing with total cost, let's use currency here. So I'll go ahead and apply the currency pipe, and now you can see that it's got the $ in front of it. It's formatted nicely with 2 decimal places. Pretty understandable. The next one here, we have my grade. Now, I don't understand why it's not 100%, but for whatever reason, it's not. But I'm going to go ahead here, and on my grade, I'm going to go ahead and put the % pipe with it. And now you can see it actually dropped off the additional digits off of it and just made it 99%. It rounded up. The next one here, I have a number for my boat length, and I want to get my boat length in meters. It's currently got 7 decimal places. It's just a 22-foot boat, right? But I'll go ahead now and change this to be a number, and we can see that it went ahead and truncated it. So it's now 22.868 meters. And now we've got our date, which is of today. I'm going to change this to a date pipe. And now we can see that it's November 5th of 2019. It's very readable and very understandable for us. So the next type of pipe I want to talk about is data pipes. So these pipes are for transforming data. And this includes the async pipe, the JSON pipe, the key value pipe, and the slice pipe. So here in my example, you can see I'm using each one of those, but maybe we'll dive in a little bit deeper on these. Does that sound good? So with data pipes, we're going to go back out to Stack Blitz again and look at an example of these. All right, so here in our app component, you can see that I've declared 3 different variables. First, I have an array of customers that has 3 different customer objects in it. Second, I've created a customer dictionary where the ID is the key and the value is the object. And lastly, I've created an observable called customers $. That's an observable of the customer array. So you can see on the right-hand side, nothing's rendering. So let's go take a look at the HTML and see what's going on. Okay, so now that we have the app component HTML opened, you can see that we have a bunch of HTML here, but it's all commented out. So let's go ahead and take the first block and make that uncommented and see how that renders. So you can see now we're trying to render the customers array, but it's coming up just as object in 3 sets of those. So that's not very intuitive for a user to see what's going on. So let's go ahead and apply our JSON pipe and see how it transforms that. So once I go ahead and apply that, now I actually see that we have an array. It's got 3 objects, and I can see that JSON data being directly injected. This is a really great thing. So when I'm trying to debug my application, I'm supposed to be getting some data back from my API, and I'm not really sure what's going on. Sometimes I might take that variable and go ahead and use the JSON pipe so I can see, do I have data or do I really have nothing? And that's why nothing's getting rendered. So our next example here is for async pipe. So go ahead and uncomment this. And now you can see we have some errors that are going on in the console. So if we go ahead and expand the console, you can see here that NG4 is complaining about iterables and wanting arrays. And if we remember right, the customers $, that is actually pointing to an observable. And so NG4s and other constructs like that really can't work with an observable as it is. So we need to go ahead and take that and unwrap it. The easiest way to do that is to go ahead and let's apply the async pipe to this. Now that the async pipe, we'll go ahead and collapse the console. Now you can see a very similar problem to what we had earlier. We have our customer label and then it's object. So Kevin, any idea what we might want to do to be able to unwrap object and be able to display that JSON?
It seems like we could apply that tip you just showed us with the JSON pipe.
So in this case here, I'm unwrapping the observable, and now I have my array of customers, and I'm iterating through that. So where I actually want to apply the pipe, the JSON pipe, is to the customer variable that is part of the NG4. And now we can see it unwraps nicely. Next, we want to talk about the key value pipe. So this is probably one of the more uncommon pipes, this one and the slice. We're going to take a look at these and at least understand what they do. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment our code here, and you see that it renders the key value label, but we're not actually getting any value. it's trying to loop over the customer dictionary, but actually we're getting an error as well. I guess that's the bigger issue here. And again, it's complaining about arrays and being able to iterate. And the problem is a dictionary is just an object literal, and there's no way for an ng4 to enumerate over that. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to take customer dictionary and we want to transform it back to an array, and we want to have it be key value pairs. So from our key value pairs back to an array, but still be able to know what the key is and the value. So if we go ahead and add the pipe to this and use key value, now we can see, get the console back out of the way, that it is now an array, and the first value, the key is 1, and the value is our object. And now we can see each one of our objects. Okay, so the next pipe I want to look at, it's fairly uncommon, but it's called the slice pipe, and allows us to take an existing array of data and then do a subselection of that. So this is something that we could do within our component, but sometimes we just want to have it be handled in our HTML, be able to reduce it down to a smaller subset. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment out our slice pipe section. And you can see right now that it's displaying all three, Bill, Susan, and John. But let's say I want to go ahead and just have it display Susan and John. So in this case, I want to use the slice pipe. So I add the pipe indicator, I add slice, I use a colon, 1:3. And you can see now that Bill has been excluded, and now just Susan and John are being displayed.
So Jesse, the data formatting looks great, but what if I want to get more specific or dynamic with how those pipes actually work? And what was going on with that slice pipe at the end of those?
Well, pipes also have parameters. And what we did here in this case is we used a colon to indicate that we wanted to pass an additional parameter. Now, do you remember when we were talking about how we define a pipe, that we could take arguments, right?
Right.
But we never talked about how to pass any parameters or arguments to that transform function. And so I'll let you in on the secret now.
Okay.
We use the colon to go ahead and indicate that now we want to pass a parameter. And in this case, we're passing two different parameters. What is the starting point to start slicing, and what is our ending point for our slicing?
Okay. So this makes them very extensible.
Exactly. This is how we start to get much more custom in how we are transforming or formatting our data. Let's take a look at a few more examples here. We can do formatting for numbers and percentages using parameters. And there's actually, as you can see here in our example, there's quite a few things that we can do in terms of passing parameters in, each one being separated by a colon. When we're defining numbers with parameters, we first have our value expression. So this is our variable, or it could be a string that we have in there. And next, we use the pipe indicator and then the number pipe. This is also applied to the percentage pipe. These are exactly the same. Now, the next one that we can do is our digits info, which that doesn't really tell me much, but there's actually a whole bunch of information about what digits info is. And this is used on several different types of pipes. So first thing that we can specify is our minimum integer digits. This tells us how many placeholders that we have to have for our number. So these are whole parts. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you have to have always 3 digits to the left of the decimal, and that even if you only have a number less than 10, that would put zeros in front of it. So let's say you're 007, right?
Right.
Yeah, James Bond.
Yep.
Then we need to have 2 zeros in front of it, even though you're just a number 7. We can go ahead and specify that there's 3 minimum integer digit parts, and that would go ahead and format that correctly for us. The next one that we can do is we can use a dot and then say, what are the minimum fraction digits? So let's say with currency. In our previous example, we had $19.20, but we only had his 19.2. Right?
Right.
But we want to have a minimum of 2 decimal places so that it makes sense to us about, hey, this is currency. So we can go ahead and specify that. And then we can also specify the maximum number of fractional digits. So let's say we want to have it be between 2 and 5 decimal places to the right of the decimal. Then I can have it be 0.2-5, and that would say there is no minimum on the left-hand side. And we have a minimum of fractional digits of 2 and a maximum of 5, and it will do the formatting for us.
So what if I'm trying to format numbers or currencies for different countries?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. So that's actually where we apply our locale. So locale says, go ahead and take a look at the settings for, let's say, French or for Italian, and format it in their native way. Okay, so I don't know if you knew this, but they actually use commas for decimals and decimals for commas, right? So it's a little bit backwards for people here in the United States, but we want to make sure that we're formatting their numbers in the exact way that they're expecting it. The next one we can talk about is dates with parameters. So much like numbers, we have a value expression. So this is, again, our variable or our string, wherever that date's coming from. And then we have our date pipe that we're specifying. From there, we can go ahead and specify a format. So we add our colon, and then we can add our format. The format is really interesting. We have one of two choices. We can use a named format, or we can specify our own custom format. So let's take a look at that really quick. So here you can see we have all different types of date formats. So we have short, medium, long, full, so on and so forth. And you can also see how they're setting those up. So this is really nice. I use this often as an example. So if I'm trying to create a custom date format that isn't supported, that I can look right here to this and go, okay, well, these are the aspects that I do want. Oh, I can see how I would format that in the custom way that my boss wants it done.
Yeah.
So the other ones here, I can also do time zone. So I think this is really interesting. We can have a date that has a time zone that's included with it. So let's say for us here at Briebug, that's Mountain Standard Time. But what if we wanted to take that same time, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and have that be translated to London and know what time it is in London? Well, we could go ahead and specify the time zone for that, and it'll automatically make that transformation for us. We can also use locale to change how the date's formatted. I don't know if you knew this, but the rest of the world puts the day first, then the month, then the year. I can't tell you how many times that's messed me up looking at dates formatted for that, and I'm completely confused on when the next conference is or when that paper's due, right?
Totally missed the meeting.
Totally missed the meeting. I blame it on the date formatting. It wasn't in my locale, right? We also have currency with parameters. So currency, much like numbers, you can see we've got some of the similar fields here, but let's walk through these. We have our value expression, again, whatever variable we want to use. And then the next one is we're specifying our currency pipe. Next, we get into currency code. So this allows us to specify what currency is this. So we can specify whether it's US dollars, Canadian, euros, whatnot. Then we actually have an opportunity to say, how do we want this displayed? We could say, hey, display the code. So it would be like USD for US dollars or EUR for euros, so on and so forth. Or we can say, hey, give me the symbol. So it'd be $sign, or if it's euros, it'd show me the euro symbol. There's a couple other different ones, and we'll take a look at those during maybe an example, right? We also have our digits info. So again, this allows us to specify the minimum number of whole parts, the minimum number of decimal places for fractional, and the maximum number of fractional decimal places. So what we've already looked at, as well as here, we can do our locale. Again, since we're dealing with currency, the whole flipping of decimals to commas and commas to decimals based on our native formatting that we would expect. Now we've covered Angular pipes with parameters. Why don't we take a look at some examples? I think this might help kind of clear it up. Excellent. So we're loading StackBlitz again. And you can see over on the right-hand side, we have pipes with parameters. Excellent, right? So you can see in our app component, we don't have anything going on. Let's look at our HTML. Well, this is where we have 3 different components that we've got rendered. This way we can kind of separate this out and keep this a little cleaner. Let's first uncomment the app number. So this is the number component. And we can see here that we've got 4 different boat lengths, and we also have an error that's occurring. We're missing some locale data. We'll talk about this in just a second. Let's come back over here to our components. Let's open up the number component. You can see here that I have a single variable called boat length that's been declared as a string. So if we look at our HTML, we can see that we've got 4 different divs, and they're wanting to do some formatting in several different ways. The first one here, we have no formatting. We're not treating it as a numbers at all. It's actually being treated as a string. The second div, we're actually specifying the number, and you can see that it's formatting it to 3 decimal places and restricting that. That's just the default that we saw earlier with number. If we want to go ahead and specify the format, we can, and in this case here, we've said, look, it should have 3 decimal places for whole parts. So you can see that it went ahead and added the 0 to the front of the number, so now it's 022. And then we set it to 0 minimum number of fractional parts with a maximum of 1. And we could play around with this. If earlier we were talking about 2 and 5, now we can see that it's re-rendered. Now it's showing 5 decimal places. Okay, so we have a lot of control there. Now let's say we wanted to format it to just 3 decimal places and it can't move. So then I'd actually say 3-3 and it would go ahead and format it. So by the way, that's the default, right? So we could easily change that to 5-5 or whatever, we needed. Now the last one here, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to format to 3 decimal places, no minimum and maximum of 1 decimal place, but we're getting nothing. And when we open up the console, we saw this earlier, we're seeing that we're missing the locale data for French, for the decimal pipe. Well, okay, this is a little bit of a problem. So what we need to do, what we forgot to do, was go ahead and include French as one of the locales that we want to support. So if we go over to our app module, you can see here, we've actually done a couple of imports. So we have our register locale data from Angular Common. And then we need to get our locale French, which we've also imported. So in line 8, we have imported locale French from Angular Common locales French. All right, so now once we go ahead and uncomment this line, we're going to go ahead and register this locale in our application, and you can see our error over on the right-hand side went away. So now if we look back at our HTML, again, we're using our boat length, we are using the number pipe, we're specifying our format, we're adding French, and if we collapse this, you can see now that the boat length is 022,9. So it has actually formatted it for French, and that would make sense to a French-speaking person.
That's great. So the Angular team's made it really easy to support other locales outside of your own with, very little effort.
Yes, absolutely. So that would be internationalization and globalization, and that's built into pipes. And so this takes a lot of worry about wondering like, hey, how would I format it for, let's say, Greece? You don't have to know any of that. Just go ahead and import the locales that you want to support for your web application, and you can automatically have it switch for you.
So these are great examples, but what if my boss wants me to format something on the page and a pipe doesn't already exist for that?
Well, that's a good question. Custom pipes would be your answer. So it's really easy for us to declare a pipe. If we go back to what we learned earlier about what makes up a pipe, remember we have a decorator, we have a simple class that implements the pipe transform base class, and we have a transform method that's going to go ahead and do this for us, right? We can go ahead and add our logic to that and be able to format it in any way that we want. So let's go ahead and take a look at a custom pipe. In our example here, I don't know if you knew this, but there's no Pig Latin pipe available.
Really?
No. I think I'm going to try to submit this as a PR to the Angular team and see if I can get this up there, but I think Pig Latin, it should make it.
Should at least file an issue.
I should file an issue. That's a great idea. Here, we have a app component that has nothing in it. And over in our app component HTML, we have a string variable here. Pig Latin is hard to speak. You can see we already have a Pig Latin pipe here declared. But before we go in and dig into this, what I wanted to show is a couple other things. One is within StackBlitz, as well as you can do this with the Angular CLI, it's very simple. I can go ahead and right click, say Angular generator. I want to create a new pipe. I can say, I want a new pipe for Kevin's pipe, right? And I could just hit enter. It will go ahead and add it to my app module. It'll go ahead and set it up for me so that I'll be ready to go. And then I'd be able to implement Kevin's pipe and whatever Kevin's pipe would do, right?
Great.
All right, let's go back. Let's go take a look at our Pig Latin pipe. So you can see here, I've got my pipe decorator. I've named it Pig Latin. And I have my Pig Latin pipe just a simple class that implements pipe transform. I've got my transform method. It takes in a value. It has args of any, and it returns whatever value is passed in, hence why we're getting Pig Latin is hard to speak. It's just transforming. It's just taking what we're giving it and giving it right back to us. Now, we could spend a lot of time trying to figure out all the rules of Pig Latin, but I did a little bit of homework before to save us just a little bit of time. So as you can see here, I have a gist with the Pig Latin logic. I'm going to go ahead and copy this code, and we're going to go ahead and paste this into our Pig Latin pipe. We're now going to add this logic, and now we've got our Pig Latin logic here, and it's still not doing anything. Oh, we need to wire it up, right? So we're still just returning the value. So if we actually change it to return this dot pig latinize of the value, hey, ta-da, it's actually working. We've now taken our statement that Pig Latin is way hard to speak and is now igpe atenle iswe hard he ute ixpe.
Sounds right.
I think it's close. Let's say, there's a little bonus down here, right? I don't know if you saw this, the challenge. What would you do to change the suffix? So if I wanted it to be slightly different, what would I do?
So we'd want to extend it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to change the functionality without writing a whole new pipe.
Right.
So maybe we could pass an argument to it.
I think that's a great idea. So how would we do that?
Well, in our transform function, right, it accepts arguments.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in our template, we could use the colon and provide a parameter from that point.
All right, let's try that. Let's try passing. What do you want it to be?
Let's do BB.
I think that's great. So I added it, but nothing happened. So let me give you a little bit of help here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have two different parts where we are either returning way or a, and we'll cover that in just a second. So what I'm going to say is if it's included, if it's there, then use this, else use that. So I'm going to say, let's change args to be suffix.
Okay.
And now I'm going to come over here and say, I want it to be suffix. Oh, not two X's. There we go. Suffix. Oh, well, we have a little bit of a problem. We need to pass suffix in, and we need to pass translate suffix as well. Great. And translate needs to take in suffix. Great. And I'm going to copy this here. Of course, we need to add it up to the top here. And now we can see that it has appended BB to the end of all of our words. Isb, so igbv, atenbv, isb. You guys get the point. All right, so what if we wanted to have it where, notice in our translate function that we have two different ways of, we have a way and an a, and that depends on whether or not the word starts with a vowel. We might just want to add a second variable.
Okay.
I'm going to add another variable here called, we'll just call it suffix 2 just in case. And it's going to be of type any. And now we're going to, a required parameter. Yeah, we'll want to make that an optional parameter as well. Suffix 2. All right, let's undo a couple of those. There we go. Suffix 2 question mark. Great. So now we're going to pass suffix and suffix 2. And add it here, suffix 2. And so we're adding it to each one of these methods all the way down to the bottom here. And we'll use it if it begins with a vowel, we'll use suffix 2, otherwise we'll use suffix 1. Now we're starting to get undefined because we didn't give that second one. Oh, this is, let's go ahead and give it the second one, which is BB2. Oh, and I used a comma. That's not right. What do I have to use between parameters, do you think, in the HTML template?
It's either a colon or a dash, right?
It's colon.
Colon.
So we'll go ahead and use colon. Now we're passing BB as the main suffix, BB2 as the second suffix. Now it's working. But I also, as you notice there, I got an undefined error. So one of the other challenges is say, well, what happens if we don't include the second? We don't really want undefined to show up. So if we go back to our pipe, we could say if suffix 2 exists or just our regular suffix or, and it's still undefined. So we have our word plus suffix 2 There we go. So I actually needed to encapsulate that within parentheses. So evaluate the whole expression and say, if we don't have suffix 2, then use suffix. And if we don't have that, use way. And in that way, all this works. So we should also test this out and make sure that if we remove the BB, that everything still works. And this actually pointed out that we do have another problem, and that is, again, it's not evaluating correctly. We need to go ahead and surround this bottom one with parentheses so it evaluates as a whole piece, and now we can see that it works both ways. So a little bit of debugging and testing there as well. Good live coding always goes well, right?
So Jesse, yesterday I was building a custom pipe and it was working with an object, right, to extract the data out of it. But I couldn't get it to update when that object changed. Is there something going on there that I missed or should be aware of?
This is a really common thing when we talk about pipes, performance, data changes, and why isn't it changing? So this often happens when we talk about mutable versus immutable data. So mutable means that I can take an object and I can just start making changes on it and now it's mutated. Versus immutable, when we follow the rules of an object being immutable, we never allow ourselves to make changes directly to that object. We make a copy of the object and we give our variable a new reference to this new object. This really helps us with change detection, and this impacts pipes and performance. So one thing that you can do is you can kind of do some stuff to get around this, but really you want it to kind of be last resort. So let's take a look at what you could do.
Okay.
And let's understand what's kind of going on here. So with pure pipes, it only updates when the reference to what's being passed in, that variable, changes. This is a great thing because we get better performance. We don't have to do change detection. We don't have to keep checking to see if the values changed. When the reference changes, we know that we need to update. We can also make pipes impure. So this recalculates on every change detection cycle. And we get not so good performance. Does this sound familiar?
It does.
Is that functions in the template?
That's right.
Yeah.
Or if it's not sure, it's just going to call it anyways.
It's going to keep calling it. So in this case here, if we want to create an impure pipe, we have our pipe decorator, but here I've got an additional parameter that I'm passing in on the decorator, and that is on the pure flag. Now it's set to true by default, but in this case here, if I want to have this be an impure pipe, I would go ahead and set it to false. But I strongly caution you, don't do this. This should be your absolute last resort. Okay, there's going to be some really big performance implications to making this decision, and there's probably some other ways that we could handle this in a lot better. As this is pulling up, this is our Pig Latin pipe again, except for we've made a couple different changes to it. So in this case, what we have is we have a customer object that has a message property on it that has our former message, that Pig Latin is hard to speak. And I have a change message function here that consoles does a console log to let us know when it's been called. And it takes and logs out or takes the message and actually changes it to, I love live code demos, because they always go so well, don't they, Kevin?
They do.
If we look at our HTML, it's pretty simple. We've got our customer object being applied with the Pig Latin pipe. And then we have a button that when it's clicked calls change message function, and it's got a change message label on it. And we've also changed our pipe over here to, when we do our transform, that we are going to call Pig Latinize on the value, when our value is our customer object, and pass it the message. So a little bit different. We want to kind of display something that's familiar, our Pig Latin pipe, and inject it with something that's a common problem where we're dealing with an object reference or an array or something like that.
Right.
So in this case, I should now be able to click change message, and it'll automatically update the message, and we'll get a new deal. And I click it, and I click it, and I click it. What's really interesting here is that change message is getting called each time, but the message doesn't actually change. It's still, Pig Latin is hard to speak, and it didn't change it to the other message. But when we go back and we look at our app component, we can see clearly the message is getting changed, but nothing's happening. Because the customer reference hasn't changed, the pipe won't recalculate. You could change it 1,000,000 times. It doesn't matter. It won't recalculate. So in this case here, if I go ahead and say, let's set the pure flag to false and save that. So now what I can see is, gosh, it recalculated 4 times already. It's done the calculation 4 times. And now when I click change message, the message changes and it called it 2 more times.
This is just like our template method problem.
It is. Template, it operates exactly like a template function. So again, I implore you, don't change it to be a impure pipe. But you ask, like, one of the questions you should be asking, like, well, how do I do it then?
Right.
If I set it back to true, it doesn't do what I want. And I click change message. It's trying to change the message, but nothing's changing. All right, let's look at how we might fix this. So when I look at my app component, when I change it, what I'm doing is I'm saying this.customer.message equals this. So my reference doesn't change. So what we want to do is change the reference. So the first thing that we want to do is say this.customer equals something different. Okay. And in this case, I want it to be a new object, and I want to spread the customer object. And then I want to take the message and get rid of the equals. And I need this to be this.customer. Great. So now let's just actually clean this up just here, put this here, put this here. Great. So this is a little bit more readable. We're saying go ahead and spread, take our existing customer variable and set it equal to a new object. We're going to spread the existing customer object, and then we're going to set the message property to equal something different. The I love live code demos. All right, we'll go ahead and click that, and we only recalculated once. Change message got called once, and our message has changed. In summary, here's a few things that I'd like developers to take away from this. First, prefer pipes over functions. We clearly see that functions within our HTML templates don't perform well, going to cause all sorts of problems. If you don't believe me, go ahead and put a console log in there in your real application and just see how many times you can get that function to be called before the user even interacts with the page once. I hope now people understand what are pipes and how they make their applications easier. They can take all this logic out of their applications, out of their components, and put it into a pipe. It's reusable. So I hope they understand the benefits of pipes and the purpose of pipes. I hope they understand built-in pipes, understanding the text pipes, the numbers, currency, percentages, and how to do the basics with that, as well as be able to use those same pipes with parameters and be able to customize their data in the exact format that they want it in. And that when those pipes don't work for them, that they're confident in how to build a custom pipe that will do exactly what they want very easily. And I hope when they're building their custom pipes that they keep in mind the difference between pure and impure and what the price is to pay. And that by using something like the spread operator and making a copy of the existing object and creating a new object with a new reference would save them from going to an impure pipe, which might cause them performance problems later. Thanks everybody for watching the video today. You can reach me via my email or my Twitter account. If we can be of help in any way to you, please go out to briebug.com, click on the schedule a call button at the top there, and set up a time for us to do a discovery call. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.